Greetings, fellow revolutionaries. It is officially bandwagon time. Let's talk about Hamilton. Okay, so I know that everyone and their mother has done a Hamilton analysis by now, but we're all obsessed, so... Plus, you clicked on this video, so either you're very lost, or you also do not want to stop talking about Hamilton just yet. Plus, I spent 3 years of my life getting a bachelor's degree in drama and have done nothing with it, so let me have this. This isn't going to be a sewing video, but we will be talking about the costumes in Hamilton, specifically how colour is used in the costumes, as well as lighting and set design and things like that, to help develop and build the characters and their journeys. We're not going to be doing a super deep dive into colour theory as a whole, just kind of touching on relevant elements. However, if you're interested in learning a little bit more about colour theory and how it can be used in costuming, stick around to the end for a very exciting announcement. Finally, I'm going to assume that if you're watching this video, you have either seen Hamilton or know the story well enough, because there are going to be some spoilers here, so consider this your official spoiler warning. Goodbye to all the people who don't want spoilers. I will see you when you inevitably come back after watching Hamilton, because you need to watch Hamilton. Do it. Off you go. Before we get into some of the more meaty elements of how colour is used in the design of Hamilton, let's talk about a couple of little things that I thought were really neat. First of all, the lights. Most of the lights in the show are a really warm yellow tone. This is a bit like putting a sepia filter on a photograph or a video. It immediately makes the thing feel old or antique. We associate the warm yellow tones with aged parchment or old photographs. It works as a shorthand for making a thing feel old. Colour is also used to separate the ensemble from the main cast. The ensemble are dressed in all neutral tones, white, grey, bit of tan, while the main characters have full colour outfits, some of which I think were chosen very deliberately, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later. This is also used in a really clever way in what I call the meta scenes of the show. At the very start and very end of the show, Burr is directly addressing the audience, and the actors who play characters like John Lawrence, Lafayette, George Washington, the main cast, are representing those characters, but they're not actively playing out a scene. So rather than being in their full colour costumes, they're in the neutral colours of the ensemble. Only the characters who played the role of a narrator, Burr, Eliza, Angelica, are wearing their full colour outfits. Also worth noting, over the course of the show, everyone's costumes get darker, except for Eliza. Her costume gets lighter, except for the section where she's literally in mourning. And the final note I want to talk about before we get into the exciting, meaty stuff is our favourite musical revolutionary boys. No, not those ones. Yeah, them. Here they are dressed in coats, each of which with a single block colour as a kind of identifying colour. We have Lafayette in navy blue, Mulligan in a dark green, and Lawrence has a deep cool brown. Hamilton, however, is wearing a rich, warm brown, the only warm-toned colour of the whole set. Alright, now let's talk about the thing that made me want to make this video. The use of the complementary colours of green and purple in the costumes of the show. So complementary colours are two colours that are directly opposite each other on the colour wheel. And when they're used together, they have a very striking contrast that is pretty much universally going to look good. Green and purple are complementary colours. In Act 2 of Hamilton, the two main characters, Hamilton and Burr, are dressed in green and purple respectively, marking them as opposites of each other, but also complementary. This is how any good protagonist-antagonist pairing should be, but it goes even deeper than just that. Green and purple are very much their kind of identifying colours in the show, but how they wear them tells us a little bit more about their personalities. Hamilton has a matching green waistcoat and overcoat, while Burr has a plain black tailcoat that he wears over his purple waistcoat. Hamilton wears his colour openly for all to see, while Burr keeps his covered, subtle and hidden. And if you know anything about these characters, you can probably see the very obvious metaphor being built here. However, there is a moment where we see Burr without his tailcoat, sitting in just his waistcoat with the purple plain to see, in Dear Theodosia. This is the scene where Burr is really at his most open and vulnerable, and it's the only time we get to see him with his colours fully on display. That scene is also staged with having Burr directly next to Hamilton, who is in a nearly perfectly matching outfit, except with green as his waistcoat. And in the final scene that Burr and Hamilton have together, The World Was Wide Enough, both men are dressed in large black overcoats. In this scene, as the men meet for their fateful duel, they are no longer opposites, but equals. As Burr says, death doesn't discriminate. Of course, Burr isn't the only character who iconically wears purple in the show. Let's talk about Thomas Jefferson. Unlike Burr, Jefferson has purple everywhere. Jefferson is literally introduced to the show as someone who came along to resist Hamilton, and then he comes strutting on stage covered in the colour that is directly opposite to Hamilton's green. And later in the show, Burr is described as a less extreme Jefferson, which is very much reflected in how these characters wear their colours. Jefferson is as much Hamilton's opposite as Burr is. He's just a lot more loud and proud about it, as he is about everything. Alright, it's time to talk about the true hero of the show, the founder of New York's first private orphanage, Eliza Hamilton. All three of the Schuyler sisters have their iconic colours that they carry through their multiple outfits of the show, and Eliza's is a light blue. As we discussed earlier, the lights of the show tend towards a warm yellow tone. And what do you get when you add blue and yellow? Green. So Eliza's dresses tend to read a little more teal under the yellow lights, except for in one scene. During Burn, as Eliza is erasing herself from the narrative, the lights are cool and crisp, and they strip every hint of green out of her dress. As she takes Hamilton out of her life, the show takes the green out of her clothes. Alright, before we wrap up, I want to just take a moment to preempt an argument that commonly comes up when you have this kind of analysis. People will often say, oh, you're reading too deep into it. There's no way they did all that deliberately. You'll often hear this argument in a high school English class when teachers ask you to find metaphors in classical works of literature. I'm just keeping that in. Surely Tennessee Williams didn't mean for the glass unicorn to be a metaphor for childhood innocence and the loss of it. Maybe he just liked unicorns. And yeah, maybe Paul Tazewell and Thomas Kail didn't sit down one day and go, ooh, let's put Hamilton and Burr in complementary colours so all of the colour nerds can nerd out about it. But that's not why we do media analysis. It's not to say that these choices were made deliberately for these exact reasons, but more to say these choices, whether intentional or not, can add this layer of meaning to the story. It's not to explain why certain things are the way they are, but to show all the different ways that stories can be told and how different elements can add and subtract from the stories that they are trying to tell. Or, well, I guess that's why I do media analysis. I'm a big believer in death of the author, so I'm not trying to figure out what the creators intended. I'm looking at the results through a lens of a very specific theory, such as colour theory, to see how we can construct all kinds of meaning out of something as simple as a purple waistcoat. Colour theory is fascinating. And when we apply it to the costumes and general design of Hamilton, you can see lots of additional layers to the story. This whole show is stunningly crafted, and I could honestly talk about it for days. But we're gonna wrap it up here because this is apparently a sewing and art channel, not a media analysis channel. So I'm going to begrudgingly put my bachelor's degree back in the closet with all the trauma it gave me. And simply say that this show uses colour exquisitely and is an excellent example of how using colour theory when designing costumes can really add to the experience of whatever costume or media you are trying to create. So, if you are interested in doing a bit of a deeper dive into colour theory, specifically angled towards costumers, here's something to get excited about. You have likely heard of Kokovid by now, an online event that Costube is running from Thursday 30th of July to Sunday the 2nd of August. As a bit of a balm for all of the cancelled events and balls and fairs and general gathering this year, a whole bunch of costumers and many special guests have decided to flood YouTube and social media with educational costuming content. We have a bunch of events planned for Instagram as well, such as a virtual red carpet and a costuming tea party. There will also be a public Discord where everyone can hang out together and do chats and sewing groups and all sorts of things. We have a heap of live panels planned for the weekend as well. So what's this got to do with colour theory, you ask? Well, one of the videos that I will be uploading for Kokovid is a quick and dirty look at colour theory for costumers. I also have a video coming up about blackwork embroidery, and I will also be hosting a live panel of a bunch of amazing trans and non-binary costumers talking about their experiences as makers and part of the community. So stay tuned for more details about that. If you're not already following Costube Guide on Instagram, now is the time to do it. They will be hosting the schedule about a week before the event, so you can follow them and check out everything that's coming up. While you're there, you can also follow me on Instagram to stay up to date with all of my projects. And while you're at it, hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so that you don't miss out on any of my videos. Thank you very much for letting me nerd out about some of my favourite things, musical theatre and colour theory, and I will see you all next time. Bye!